Well, it's been 2 years after the deadly Usindiso Building Fire, and families as well as survivors have all gathered to honor the victims and also demand justice. And our reporter Mbalenhle Mthethwa is currently following that story for us, and she joins us live now with an update. Mbalenhle, it's good to have you with us on SA today. So take us through, of course, the commemorative events that were taking place today.
Well, the families and those who once stayed here have started gathering here for that candlelight vigil in memory of those who lost their lives in the fire that claimed. Behind me, as I step out of the shot, you will see that the building remains. However, the entrances to the building have been blocked off using bricks, and I think this is in an effort to prevent those who would want to try and occupy the building illegally cannot do so. You will remember that this building was illegally occupied and caught fire and saw many jumping to their death as they were trying to flee from the fire. And right now we're joined by one of the organizers who is going to tell us as to why they have decided to host this event. Thank you so much for your time. Why have you decided to remember the incident that took place here, that very unfortunate incident?
It is about a struggle for justice, but also a remembrance on and by itself, because it cannot be right that 76 poor black lives were lost in such a tragic manner, and the country pretend as if nothing has happened. This was a tragedy. All of these were children of, were children, were mothers, were fathers, were brothers and sisters. And I think this is a struggle to humanize them, to bring their humanity to the fore. Because I think that we have got to reckon with this tragedy, but also to say this was a needless tragedy for which we demand justice. This building is a testament to a criminal neglect of the inner city by the city administration, of the housing crisis that is a deliberate or the outcome of the deliberate neoliberal austerity measures. And of course, the privatization of accommodation, of housing, is commodification, despite that right being there in the constitution, by the ruling class, by the successive administration, of this city and so on. It is also about a neglect in terms of provision of social services, water and electricity, that have obviously aggravated what would have been a minor manageable blaze in an event that there was water, if that was, of course, allowed. So we want justice.
What would justice look like for you?
So for us, justice means those that, particularly the Commemorating Commission, have named as line of authorities whose neglect has led to this tragedy, need to be prosecuted. No doubt about it. Secondly, we want compensation for the families, for the survivors. But more than that, justice for us means making sure that there's never ever another Usindiso tragedy. The fact that in the span of the 2 years since this tragedy, we have seen many more, right, tragedies like this in the inner city, but in informal settlements around Greater Johannesburg and across the country. It means that the ruling class is not appreciating what has happened here and addressing that. We want the housing crisis to be addressed.
Now, when we talk about compensation, who needs to be compensated? We have to also remember that this building was illegally occupied. Are we then saying those who broke the law and illegally occupied this building should be compensated?
Well, I mean, the issue of how this building came to be there, right? It's like many of the buildings in the city, right? It is really, as I've said, a neglect where you have groups of city officials, of course, collaborating with slum lords in the city to hijack what is otherwise public buildings. Some of the people that many of the people that stayed here when it used to be a shelter, right, for abused women. They have been here. So it is authorities that decided to abandon the shelter, and when they abandoned the shelter, they abandoned these victims of this abuse and gender-based violence with their families. Others have joined them, and that is also because of the criminal hijack by some organized syndicate who parasite on the desperation, because the ruling class and the city administration and government are not addressing appalling levels of the housing crisis in the inner city and across the country.
Now, if you say that, a syndicate had taken over and individuals were paying a certain syndicate, this means that the individuals who stayed here could afford to pay, and therefore there hasn't necessarily been what would be what you are referring to as a commodification of housing.
So let's start here. Do you agree? When you have the victims of gender-based violence are staying in a shelter, and the authority and the government decided to abandon them in that shelter, that is a neglect. And that is what I think Commemorating Commission speak to. Secondly, when the government is aware that there are buildings in this city, many of which actually are public buildings, right, that are not being serviced, there is actually no way that, because they allow this so-called abandonment is self-serving, right? One, because there is collusion between these slum landlords and the officials that need to be named, that need to be held accountable within the city. But also for the political administration and leadership is about abdication of their responsibility to provide basic services like water, electricity, so it's easy for them to abandon these buildings, and that's a problem for us.
We'll continue with this conversation, but for now I have to hand back to studio. We have run out of time, but we will give you more as the proceedings outside of the Usindiso building that was gutted in flames 2 years ago and led to the death of 76 people. When the proceedings begin, we will be standing by for you. It's back to you in studio.
Absolutely. Mbalenhle Mthethwa, the SABC News reporter, joining us from, of course, that commemorative event of the Usindiso Building Fire out in Johannesburg.